Hello there. Yes, it's me, your good friend Gary Jesch here at Invirtua. And I'm so happy to be here with you today to do the second part of our webinar series on autism and anxiety. We gathered here today with my colleague Leslie Baldwin, and it's great to have you guys on board. We're going to have a nice little talk here today. And Leslie is taking us through a really interesting topic to me, the idea of how sensory perception can impact not only anxiety, but impact daily lives of autistic children. Let's start out right off the bat here with a little introduction to Leslie, if you
Okay.
don't mind. And I do want to say a couple of things before I actually get started. First of all, I'm producing as well as hosting this webinar, so from time to time I might glance over there. Don't worry about it. I'll come back to you and to Leslie, and we'll be doing it that way for this presentation. And we've kind of divided this up into two sections today. The first section is where Leslie is going to take us through this information about sensory processing. And then we're going to go into a little bit of information about our avatar adventures here at Invirtua, relating to sensory processing, and then also to give you a demonstration of just how that works live in real time. So we are not going to be giving you anything that's pre-recorded here in this webinar. We're actually going to let me go and show you a live brief look at our avatar experience, our avatar adventure, right here in our webinar today. So we plan to pretty much use up that hour, and we're going to be also offering a shot for you folks to ask us questions during this presentation as well. So that's how it's going. We're going to record it, and we'll have a video replay up on our website so that you can go back and look at it, and also we'll have a transcription there, as well as for this particular session, Leslie has gone to a lot of trouble to prepare some special resources for parents in the form of other documents and tips and and she'll be discussing that a bit as we go through our program today. So let's go ahead and start out here by introducing Leslie Baldwin. Leslie, here we are back again. It's
I,
great to have you. Thank you very
well,
much for coming.
yeah, thank you for having me, Gary. I'm really excited to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a teacher by trade. I've worked with children on the autism spectrum for quite a few years. I hate to say how many, but one of the privileges I had as a teacher was to work with Texas Children's Hospital in a program for children on the autistic spectrum, where it was multidisciplinary, where they received not only educational instruction, but physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech. And so I'm hoping I can share some of the things I learned during my time in working with kids and with my fellow colleagues.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, I think what you have for us today is really fascinating, actually, and the perspective of being a teacher and working with kids really makes this information valuable. So, well done. Here, let's
Yeah.
see if we can get our next slide going. So yeah, as I said, I'm Gary Jesch. I am what's called these days the digital puppeteer or an avatar pilot. I came up with a technology a few years ago about using interactive avatars. First of all, in entertainment and marketing, and then about 6 years ago, I decided that I think I've got a way of bringing this to help folks that are dealing with problems that are presented because of autism. And so we've been working with therapists that work with autistic kids and directly with autistic kids, autism clinics at the University of Nevada, Reno, and also supporting actual research from Brigham Young University, where they studied our software and the way to use it and then wrote that up and published that about a year ago now is when that was published. And you can read that publication actually on our website. So, things are moving along quite nicely. We nowadays offer this to parents, helping focus on parents seeing dramatic improvement in the lives of their autistic children. So that's what it's all about for Leslie and me here at Invirtua.
Absolutely.
And the way that we're doing it is we've set up a virtual clinic. When I say virtual, I mean that it's based and accessed through a web browser online, so that nobody has to leave their home. They can get involved with us through telehealth sessions and video calls, and navigate around our secure portal, which we'll be telling you about a little bit more. So
Yeah.
Leslie, I'm going to let you jump in here and tell us more about this. I'll be right along with you, and we're going to work on this together. Let's see what we
Mhm.
have going on here. So what is the issue today?
Well, we're going to be talking about sensory processing issues that we often see in autistic children and adults. It can be that the world and environment around them seems a little too fast, a little too noisy, a little too bright. There's a lot going on, which affects the sensory processing system. If it's not working well, what we often see is a really high anxiety level. And what we want to do is look at how the sensory processing system is working or not working for them, make some changes in their daily activities that might help. And that in turn, we often see will lower their anxiety level.
Excellent, because it's all kind of linked, right?
It really is. I think, I look at the sensory system, the mind-body connection, you really can't separate it. And when you see the kids I've worked with over the years, when that anxiety level really gets to a heightened level, it's very difficult to pay attention in class. It's difficult to focus. It's to problem solve. Even outside of the classroom, when you're in a store, in the community, if you're at home, I think all the parents I know have experienced what can happen when a child becomes overwhelmed.
Right, exactly. And when we're speaking of anxiety, we're talking about an emotion, basically, right? That could also be referred to as overwhelm or
Mm-hmm.
fear, helplessness, worry.
Right.
So to some extent, I've seen it kind of show up in as a similar to stage fright,
Mm-hmm.
where
Yeah.
autistic kids just have this big rush of performance anxiety, if you will, and
Mm-hmm.
they get stuck in it so much, just as if I've seen some adults end up with that performance anxiety also, right? But it
Absolutely.
can show up really as an intense emotion that they can get stuck in, and it can block them from doing everything from simple things, in their day, to
Mm-hmm.
actually learning and improving and communicating.
Yes. Absolutely.
So what's the groundwork to be laid here in terms of our senses?
Well, what I'd really like to look at is, the emotional regulation and physical regulation and how the sensory system can affect that. And we're talking about touch, movement, taste, smell, vision, and hearing. It's how you, as a human being, all children, all adults, take in the world around them. When your sensory system is working well, no problem. You don't really experience roadblocks that prevent you from being able to function in your daily life. However, when you're having sensory challenges or sensory processing disorder, that's when we look at something that is preventing you from really being able to fully function and adapt to your environment. It makes it very difficult.
And that can show up in uh, people of any age as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're all born with a sensory system, but there can be different experiences in life or different physical things that you go through that can change how your sensory system is working. So yeah, it's always good to be aware of how it's working, and most of us don't even think about it. You just don't, think I'm cold, or this is too hot, or I don't like that fan going, it's bothering me, but you don't really think about it in terms of your sensory system.
So this is a little list of some of the challenges that we might face. Are all of these equally important, or does it more depend on like the situation that a person's in?
I think, to me, everything is equally important. If you look at the list of what we have on here, if you're having some sensory challenges that heighten your anxiety, it's going to make it more difficult to communicate, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, to stay connected and have a back and forth flow of communication, to stay connected with others, to problem solve, to share your ideas. One of the major things that, I've seen over and over is, it really affects physical and emotional regulation, as well as, what we want all of our kids to be able to do is start to do some independent problem solving as they move forward. And, many times the sensory system, if it's overwhelmed, it makes it almost impossible to be an independent problem solver. And so we really want to help support kids to move through that and past it so they can feel successful.
So when you worked at Texas Children's Hospital
Mhm.
with autistic kids, what did you see in your experience was like one of the most dominant challenges? Is there one that
Well,
really jumps out at you out of this?
I think, frequently I would see kids that were dysregulated. And by that, I mean that they might have been, their sensory system isn't working as effectively. So they could be overwhelmed with being in a different environment. So you're seeing emotional and physical dysregulation because the anxiety then comes in and it just kind of escalates. And so what we were working on were strategies to help them first to co-regulate with us and then eventually be able to regulate on their own. But depending on what I can tell you is that I never saw two children that were alike.
Yeah.
They're all completely different. So you really have to take into account when you're seeing a behavior that looks dysregulated, you want to look beyond that. What is going on underneath that? Is it a problem with the sensory system? What is going on? Because frequently we found if you kind of really observe and take the time to understand, you can help that child learn some strategies that can be really helpful and comforting to them.
Let's take a look at some of that. You had said earlier the importance of, emotionally and physically
Mhm.
regulated. What does that mean to us?
Well, what I want to talk about is, even as adults, we all do things to help ourselves stay regulated, and we are stimulating our sensory system. We're either bringing it down by taking a deep breath,
Oh, uh-huh.
talking, or maybe we just need to get up and move around after a meeting and you're tired and you'd rather go and take a nap, but you've got to
Hmm.
stay awake.
Right.
There are all sorts of things we do. Grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, things that help make us feel a little more emotionally and physically regulated. And so that is the same type of thing that we're talking about doing with kids who may not have learned those coping skills yet. Where as adults, most of us can regulate on our own. We don't need someone to help us regulate. Although at times, if something happens, say you're in a car accident, sometimes having someone help you gather yourself can really make a difference. And so I liken that to having a child that is, upset to the point like we would be if we were in a car accident that, like, oh my gosh, you get your adrenaline going and everything, kind of helping them learn those strategies to bring that anxiety down, be calm and attentive rather than either under or over reactive.
And so I guess a lot of this has to do with our senses, as you say. Um,
Yes.
so you said that all these kids were different. So does
Mhm.
that mean that they have like, I think you used this term with me, they have a sensory profile that's all their own, right?
Right, right. And one of the things that I think we'll be sharing with the families today that we'll be putting on the website is a sensory profile checklist that is, to me, extremely helpful. You can use it for yourself, your child, your friends, and really look at what is your sensory profile. And you're looking at, your hearing, your vision, all of the modalities that we talked about, but then you're looking under each one, you can be overreactive of one area, like hearing, like, I've had work with many children that loud noises or sometimes even a noise we're not paying attention to can drive them up the wall. So that's where you get the noise canceling headphones out and things that can be helpful. So we're looking at, sometimes, there you might have a profile where someone is very overreactive to everything,
Mm.
or they might be very underreactive. And by underreactive, I mean it's kind of like the couch potato syndrome where, you know, they're there, but they don't even look like they're paying attention. They probably are to some degree, but they're kind of, the low tone, kind of it look like they'd rather be sleeping than paying attention. And what you're going to be doing is helping them rev up their sensory system so that they are more alert. um, then we look at sensory seeker versus sensory avoidant. And you can be a little mix of everything, but sensory seekers are the ones that don't mind if they get food on their hands or their face, or
Mhm.
they love to finger paint or roll around in the grass. We all know the sensory seekers. And then you have the avoiders who will not get on the grass with bare feet, would not finger paint. They might hold on to a long paintbrush and kind of dab it, but if they don't want to have anything to do to have that paint on them. And so you really, start looking at how are they avoiding things? Are they seeking things out? And that's going to tell you a little bit about how their sensory system is working and what type of input they need. The other
So,
thing is sensory activity. The kids that sometimes they're the seekers and sometimes they're avoidant, or sometimes they're overreactive, sometimes they're underreactive. And so, I always help parents and work with them and saying, your child better than anyone. And I really think with using kind of a sensory profile checklist, if you haven't already gotten a sense of what your child's sensory profile is, it will give you a starting point.
so something like, say, a child is hypersensitive to sound or hearing,
Mhm,
that would go on to that profile to
mhm,
alert the child's caregivers and to remind the parents that this sensitivity to sound might indicate that
mhm.
a set of noise canceling headphones or uh, uh, sound protection might be a
Right.
valuable thing for him if anxiety started to show up, right?
Right, right. And, I always look at, when you're seeing behaviors that are concerning or, not really what you're hoping for, meltdown or totally dysregulated, you start looking at, okay, what else is going on here in the environment that could be
Mm.
contributing to it? I don't, as a teacher, this was a valuable lesson for me is don't assume a child is acting out just to be naughty. Typically what I found is there's an underlying reason that you're seeing that behavior come out.
Oh, okay. And it could relate back to this profile then, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, tell us a little bit about how routines fit
hmm
into this a bit. We develop
hmm
habits and routines, and
hmm
so do autistic kids. What does it
Right.
mean when we examine a daily routine?
Well, I think what we want to look at, and a lot of the kids really like a predictable routine. And if you are seeing dysregulated behavior in certain routines, whether it's morning, I frequently see transitions can be really difficult. Is there, he's fine at home, but in the classroom, it's very difficult. Certain stores, are there certain times of the day where you are noticing a pattern of behavior that's fairly predictable
Hmm.
that isn't, you know, very helpful or is preventing your child from accomplishing what they need to do? That's when you want to start looking at that environment and what is going on. Sometimes it may even be, a lot of our kids deal with constipation and may not be able to verbalize it, and that's a sensory issue for a lot of the kids that they're having stomach issues, and it's painful or they're not feeling well, and so kind of really tuning in to what's going on with them, it can really help you in figuring out how you want to strategize to help them.
All right. The other thing that kind of came up when we were talking about this earlier, you mentioned, um, I guess it's a technique or a method called a sensory diet. And I don't think we're really talking about nutrition specifically here, although
Right.
nutrition might fit in. But overall, do you mean that with a sensory diet, we eat, quote, eat certain senses every day, or you know, we have a better pathway of things that are helpful to us? Is that what it's we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think you've got the idea. I look at a sensory diet as, really having some activities built into your child's day on a regular basis that meets their sensory system needs. If you help them meet their sensory system needs, then you should typically see their anxiety come down, they're better able to function throughout their day, and without dysregulating. And so you really want to look at what are the types of things that your child, that you can identify that is already helpful for your child, and then build from that.
Sounds like an interesting process because if
Mhm.
nothing else, it's something you could write down, right?
Yes, absolutely,
And how does that
absolutely.
sensory diet impact anxiety, though?
Well, what we find is that if you are providing some sensory related activities that are addressing what their needs are, that it will help a child stay regulated. It helps them and attend, and typically improves their classroom behavior. If there are behavior issues at home, they're really able to be more calm and attentive, which is what they need to be to learn. And it can also help them shift from one activity to another when you have a sensory activity kind of interspersed or available to them. So it's just easier to transition.
Leslie, I think I have one of our favorite slides back up again. Are you
Oh,
able
yeah.
to see our little girl here with
I can see
the paint
her.
all over her face? So this
Yeah.
makes it special, when kids kind of overcompensate or over engage in a way, right? So makes
Yeah.
for bigger messes and cleanups.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
with a
Absolutely.
sensory toolbox, right? So
hmm
that's what we're going to talk about doing next is building a sensory toolbox. If you don't mind jumping back
Sure. I'm
in.
going to switch over to that. No
All right.
problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when we talk about building our sensory toolbox, we're going to be looking at strategies that are going to address your child's sensory challenges. So whether it's touch, movement, taste, smell, vision, hearing, and what you really want to do is help them so that they can function, their sensory system isn't overwhelmed, it brings their anxiety down. And so we're going to talk about some of the activities and things that you can do with that.
Okay, sounds good. And that these six then are pretty much what we would try to cover all six bases with these kids, right?
Well, I think it's sometimes impossible to do it all at the same time,
Hmm.
depending on the activity. But yes, you do want to address, the sensory system, especially what you think might be a trigger for dysregulation.
Right. So the toolbox that you're going to be telling us about is the going back to this idea of the sensory
Right.
diet. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to run a set of slides here,
Yeah.
and if you would just kind of take us through the
Mm-hmm.
details here a little bit, that would be great.
Okay. So what we already talked about, I'll just go through that quickly, is, making a sensory processing profile, because you're really going to want to kind of have at least a basic understanding of your child's sensory processing profile before you start choosing activities and strategies for how you can help them. Then I want to look at, you want to do a visual chart of your child's schedule. I have really found, whether a child is verbal or nonverbal, having the visual chart can really be helpful for them with sequencing, but also with transitions, helping remind them, okay, first this, and then we're going to be doing this next. And yes, you get to do that after, and so they can see, even though the one activity or another, especially during the school day, it may not be their favorite, that, hopefully there's some fun things built in. Okay, as part of the schedule, but what you want to do is build in sensory breaks. Think about the times where your child has real difficulty in participating or following through on an activity or transition. And those are the times where you really want to build in a sensory break. Or if you have like a predictable pattern, that you build it in. If something happens and they become dysregulated, you want to have something available for them. And if you have like a visual of what options they can choose from, that is very simple, not overwhelming, frequently they will choose an activity that is going to address a sensory need that they have.
And some of the resource documents show this too, right?
Right. The resource documents we're going to post online have some great ideas for activities, really simple. You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of things, a lot of things you'll have at home, but these are ideas, that can be used by a therapist, a parent, in the classroom. If your child's classroom doesn't have these breaks built in, but, it can always be a discussion you can have with the teacher or in their IEP.
Okay, and
Um,
the activity menu then.
right. And so, similar to their schedule, what I like to do is have an activity menu that has, choices for them that they can choose, or you can help them choose, that you are okay with them doing. What you don't want to do is don't put finger painting on if you're not prepared to let them finger paint. So, because, then it's pretty disappointing and you might see some more dysregulation. So think about the activities that are easy, whether it's a squeezy toy for a child that needs that input, whether they need some tight squeezes or to be wrapped up in a blanket like a burrito to help them, kind of regain their regulation. There's tons of activities, and I think many families will, once you see the list, you'll see some of the things that, your child is probably already seeking out. And you can make, some really fun games out of it too.
All right, and then finally that break box or a
Yeah.
basket with go-to items. Pretty much every therapist has got something like that going on, and parents should too.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's one of those things that you want to really encourage your child to, when they are feeling overwhelmed, anxious, their sensory system, it's a little too much, or when you see they need to be revved up a little bit, because it works both ways,
Hmm.
you want to have, kind of something at the ready. So I recommend having, a box or basket that they know is theirs, that they can go get, something out of it, a squeezy toy, or, something for movement or music that really might help them regulate. And then maybe something, a bag to keep in the car. And then hopefully, most classrooms, many teachers, encourage the fidget objects and things, maybe a little pad for their chair so that if they're wiggly, they get kind of that proprioceptive movement. And, it really does help them pay attention and stay alert, and focus in class, and can also be very helpful at home.
Let's take a look at a couple of examples then on this, Leslie.
All right, so here we have a visual schedule and, kind of a typical day for many kids. And so what you want to think about are, are there any times in between that you can build in a sensory break if you see that pattern of behavior where, your child needs to get some movement in, or they need some quiet time to bring things down because the environment is a little overwhelming. And, that can really help make their day go more smoothly. It can, and, our goal is to have these children learn to regulate on their own without needing a partner to really coach and get them through that.
So this chart then might be something that you would put up, um, and then you would refer to it like during the day as a kind of like a break. We had mentioned that break box, but there's other activities that can go up on this chart to kind of break things up, whether it's maybe playing video games,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
a child really loves those video games, but going on a walk, it'll be good for
Mm-hmm.
everybody, that type of thing, right?
Right,
All
right.
right. All
You,
right.
yeah, and I think many times children will tell you or express what their favorite activity is, but if it's something like playing video games or being on the computer to the exclusion of everything else, you want to, look at doing it within a limit. Because you want them to be also moving their body. Kids are going to choose the activities that are maybe easier for them. And some of the other things are a little harder, and that's okay. But we want to still encourage them to be well rounded.
Right, and that their own profile may indicate that they are not that excited about motion and moving or walking or doing physical exercises. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where we take that information from the profile
Right.
and build a visual schedule up. The other one is then like another chart here
Mm-hmm.
for that sensory diet. That's how that kind of fits in, right?
Right. And so, yeah, I just put together a quick visual chart as an example, but certainly families can do this at home, teachers, therapists, and having those options. So, let's say, you choose as a parent what you think are the acceptable activities. But I put on there typically, like a chew toy. Many kids need that oral input, playing with Play-Doh for a few minutes and, taking a 10 or 15-minute break, going in the quiet corner, to read or do a puzzle, some time on the computer, jump and move, or a squeezy toy, something that they can fidget with their hands because, we know a lot of them they're seeking that input. And if you think about a child who you would talk about their stimming and they're doing, different things that they're moving, or, people's like, oh, they're stimming. But the way I like to really view it is that they are organizing their sensory system. They found
Okay.
a way to either calm themselves down or to, ramp it up. And it may look unusual, but what you have to remember is that as these children get older, they are going to find more socially acceptable, what people would say would be socially acceptable ways to kind of regulate themselves. But and sometimes they don't, they're not recognizing at an early age that that's what they need or what they're doing. And so part of our job is to help them understand how they're feeling, let them express that and see how we can mitigate any sensory processing difficulties they're having, so that they can really fully function rather than being constricted in different environments.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of that sounds to be like play is a big factor. Is that
Yeah,
your experience as well?
yeah, I guess I'm a huge proponent of play. I feel like you can make almost anything into a game and make it fun. And that's how children learn about their world. When they're young, their first teachers are their parents. You play peekaboo, you start out with the little, fun things. And, that's how parents, really teach their kids. They're their first teachers, but then, they learn by playing house, by playing, they go to the doctor, or they pretend they're the OT. I think that's how they view the world and experience it, and kind of start to learn how to problem solve. So I think it's never can be underestimated, the power of play.
And parents are so important. They're especially when we're talking about
Absolutely.
autistic kids, right?
Absolutely. To me, you're doing a real disservice if you are working with a child alone and you're not um, interacting and really bringing the family into what you're doing. Because what I've seen over the years is that, for the kids that are carrying over some of the things that they're doing in a classroom or in therapy, those are the ones that, overall will do better with that type of support in practice.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, there's any number of things that it can help kids learn about, right? And learn to have in their lives, as you said earlier, critical thinking skills, self-confidence,
Mhm.
creativity. That's just kind of where it starts. And even empathy, learning how
Yeah.
to share and take turns, things like that.
Yeah.
These are social skills that are developed through play, actually, and so
Mhm.
maybe the game that they play or how long they play isn't necessarily the point. It's the richness of being involved in a play uh, environment, a play scenario, right?
Yeah, it's the experience. And what I've seen is that the children that, if you can help them, if you think about being regulated and not being over anxious, when you're anxious, it's pretty hard to enjoy an experience and to be into it. Where if you can let that anxiety go and you are really paying attention to those sensory processing issues, it really opens up a whole new world for these kids that otherwise they're really can stay stuck on, the parent that asked about, the textures and the food. And what you really want to do is help them address that in a way that can be playful, but, not forceful. Because I
Okay.
think, you don't, I don't want to
You want it to be
traumatize
fun, right?
anybody.
Yeah.
And I think it would be traumatizing for the person if they tried to force the child. Like, yeah, I'm not into that at all.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but you want to be playful and fun, because, otherwise, who wants
yeah.
to do it? It's not
Right.
fun.
Yeah, we can all tell the difference between fun and trauma.
Oh yeah. Yes,
Speaking of
definitely.
fun, and so thank you, Leslie. You know, you really covered that well, and I have a feeling we're going to do a little bit more with this topic going down the road here together because it's such
Mhm.
a rich area. I mean, and your experience and knowledge about it is really vast too. So we'll get into some specifics one of these days and dig in
Absolutely.
there. So.
Mhm.
You know, when it comes to play, this is a lot of the way that our avatar adventures are set up, where we bring in these interactive avatars into a family's home on their laptop, or even in some cases on the TV in the living room, if it's possible to do that, and to give the autistic child, the opportunity to play with a cartoon character that can see them and hear them and talk back and forth with them to have a conversation. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of what we're going to demonstrate next here is how that goes.
Mhm.
You've seen the images of the avatars here in our slideshow and that. And this particular image is of a character that I created based on an autistic boy that we worked with about 5 years ago. So you can see we can kind of get into that as well. As I
Mhm.
said, these avatars appear in real time, fully interactive. We can use sound effects to engage those senses. We
Mhm.
see kids reaching up and touching the screens often. That's not unusual at all, and we can make the character react to that touch, simulate it with like a
Mhm.
jumping around when they get tickled or something. And we
Yeah.
also um, use technology that we call infotainment, right? It can be
Mhm.
educational or edutainment, right? Education that's entertaining as well.
Yeah.
So this isn't a software that you can buy. It's actually signing up for sessions where the avatar comes into the home via video calls, so what we call telehealth. And the avatars are friendly, they're supportive, they're encouraging. They really want to, make friends and to be there in a totally different way, new and unique way of providing a social interaction for autistic children.
Mhm.
And so, as the avatar pilot, and that's kind of what I'm describing is the work that I do as an avatar pilot of puppeteering and controlling the avatar, is that I come prepared with additional content as well as plans that I've discussed with the parents so that we have a good idea of how to approach the session. We've learned about the child and their preferences and what they like and don't like, and come up with ideas for the content. All that stuff's pretty exciting, isn't it, Leslie? You get a compassionate sidekick, right?
Yeah. I
How
think
great is that?
it's been very, exciting for me as a parent and an educator to really observe some of the children and their reactions to the animated characters. And you can just see, I always remember Stanley Greenspan, who was a child psychologist, talking about going for the gleam in the eye. And I'll tell
Uh,
you, you don't, like, there is a gleam in the eye of every child I've seen interacting with the avatars. It's really kind of magical and almost hard to describe, but they're so compelling. And, that's something, these kids, get to know these characters and know that they're their friend, and it's supportive and really keeps them engaged. I think much longer than many parents think they're capable of.
and especially when it comes to these, we're talking about anxiety, right?
Right.
So the playfulness and
Mhm.
this idea of a sidekick who cares reduces the anxiety, and when
Yeah,
the anxiety goes down, then the learning can go right straight up. So that's pretty cool.
absolutely.
So these are some of the avatars that we've created and that we use in these sessions. So each parent has their pick of the avatar that they'd like to have work with their child. And if it's a female character, sometimes I'll actually do a voice altering software that makes me sound more high pardon me, more high pitched. Um, and then each of the fish characters has a different kind of backstory and a attitude, so that's a lot of fun. And even Cyber Santa down there for the holidays. Yeah, so it's kind of fun that way. And talking babies that dance. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got it all. And the way it shows up, as I said, is
Mhm.
through our virtual clinic. The Each of the our clients and their parents are given a, special place in our portal, and so when it comes time to have a session, they just simply click on the
Mhm.
appointment that's marked there on the calendar, and the interactive video session opens up, and there's the avatar. In this case, the fish Marley is
Mhm.
engaged here with Braden. This is a young man that was involved in sessions about a year ago, and we had a lot of fun with Braden and got a lot of great comments back from his mom. We'll have to actually go through some of those comments from Braden's mom and others one of these days and share those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to say, we've done the telecalls, and then this picture here shows a situation where we're actually at the autism clinic at the University of Nevada, Reno, which is a two-room setup where
Mhm.
I'm in one room running the avatar, and then the therapist and the child are in the other room looking at the avatar on the screen. And
Mhm.
that also is an interesting setup. Right now, we're set up to do all telehealth, all video calls. But one of
Mhm.
the things that we learned here, Leslie, was that in some cases we can actually turn the software over to the child
Yeah.
and let them be the voice of the avatar. And that's also gets really interesting. That's a topic, a good topic for another call
Yeah.
one of these
Absolutely.
days. But it's another
Definitely.
way to use the technology. So, what do you think? Shall we go ahead and see if we can jump into a live session here?
I think that sounds,
With
yeah,
Scott
let's do
recorded,
it.
and I'll turn the screen sharing off. So we haven't recorded this. So I'm actually going to switch my camera over.
Mhm.
Hope the power doesn't go off again.
I hope
But
not.
I
I
know
hope
that.
not too.
So I'm going to put on this extra headset, and it's got a microphone on it that picks up my voice. And then here I've got what's called a digital tablet, and this is how I control the avatar. So I'm actually sitting right here at my desk, and I'm animating or puppeteering our avatars in real time using this, and this is how it comes out. And Leslie, in this case, would you mind being kind of like taking the role of a child who's our client? And maybe
Sure.
a girl, we'll call her little Leslie, who's
Okay.
kind of showing some distress, some anxiety, something's going on, and we'll demonstrate just what ways that Marley here can use his skills to change the dynamic of the situation.
Okay. Sure.
Hey,
Hi,
well, hi
Marley.
there. My name's Marley, and it's so good to see you. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Leslie. Hi, Marley. How are you today?
Oh, I'll tell you, it's all going pretty good, Leslie. I'm down here in the ocean, and a lot of buddies around here. We've got whales, sharks, and little fish, and big fish. And, I just kind of noticed, Leslie, while you're sitting there, you're looking a little bit anxious. And, I hope that everything's okay.
I don't know, Marley. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I'm a little anxious today.
Oh, it kind of makes me a little bit sad to hear that, but you know what? I have something that I think might cheer you up a little bit. Let's go take a look at my
Okay.
friend Fred the turtle.
Oh.
Yeah, look at this. This is a beautiful place under the ocean. This is called a turtle cleaning station. And you know what? What I'd like to say is, you notice how Fred is just swimming along, and he doesn't look like he's got a care in the world. Maybe
Mm.
that's how you would like to be. What do you think?
I think I would like that. He looks pretty calm.
He does. Maybe you could, you know, do the what Fred does to calm down a little bit. Can I show you?
Okay.
All right. So what Fred does, see how his big flippers, right? He just barely moves them just enough to kind of stay with these little fish that are eating the algae off of his
Oh,
back. See
like
how
like
slowly
this?
he moves? Well, no, that's a little bit
Is
too
it?
fast. I would say try
Oh,
just moving really nice and slow with your hands. See how Fred's flippers are just kind of hanging there? That's more like it. Yeah, that's the idea. Just there he
oh,
goes, lifts and gives it a little flip, stopping, another little flip. You kind of get the
oh.
idea there?
I wonder if
Yeah.
he's ticklish.
Oh, I don't know, with all those fish trying to eat algae off of the back of his shell. Well, you're doing really well, Leslie. That's exactly the idea, is to
Oh,
just move nice and gentle and maybe take some breaths. Yeah, you did a great job with that. Thank you so much.
oh. Thank you, Marley. Fred looks
Yeah.
like he's fun.
Uh-huh. So there we go. That was a demonstration of how interacting with the avatar in real time. And Leslie, you noticed a couple of things. One of them is that there's a physical aspect to this engagement with Marley,
Mhm.
along with the visual one, right?
Right. And I think, that's one of the things that I really liked about this is that it's not a passive just watch and no participation that you can really since Marley the characters can see you and interact with you in real time when you can tell that you're kind of losing someone's attention or they're looking anxious or they're up and down and all around, you can really kind of bring them back in by asking them to play a little game of imitation or Simon Says or oh, I'm gonna hide, can you find me now? And it kind of brings them back in. And I think what Marley can do or any of the characters is you really key in to where that child is, if they're a little overreactive or are they underreactive, and then you kind of adjust what your approach is in terms of what they need.
Exactly. And as our good friend Dr. Tom Buggy would point out, that that's kind of squeezing in a little bit of video modeling, right?
Right.
Whereas the Fred the Turtle is modeling the kind of calming physical
Mm-hmm.
behavior, and then Morphe is trying to explain how it helps. So you get it looks very simple, but you get a fairly complex interaction that also the child could have a conversation about. So,
Right.
and this
Right.
is what it looks like in our interactive avatar setup. So let's just explain real quickly how that works, and then we'll
Mm-hmm.
take a couple of questions to
Okay.
wrap things up. So somebody who wants to get into the avatar adventure, all they need to do is to simply be in touch with us, and we'll make an appointment, and sometimes a couple, to tell them about it, tell how to get acquainted with us, and we'll also get acquainted with them to learn about their children and the conditions and the special cases that we'd be looking at in this avatar adventure, to try to guide them into the most helpful and resourceful way to really bring about dramatic improvement. So we discuss the goals and we begin the development of this action plan. And then we'll also, as part of this, give the parents a behind the scenes demo where they'll see me, like you folks did today, actually puppeteering and controlling the characters so that they know what to expect there. Then we schedule the first avatar adventure, and that session is completely free for the child to come in with mom or dad or a family member at their side. And all of our sessions, we'd like to include the parents because we feel that the parents there are great teachers and supporters also. And in some cases where, maybe a therapist is helpful, that's good, we can do that. Or maybe we just want to have a session without a therapist and just see kind of what happens. So we do that. And then once that's all good, it's off to the races here with the uh, virtual clinic portal. And so the appointments get scheduled and come and do the appointments with me. And that's how it goes. And they can be once a week, twice a week, whatever type of schedule that you like to get on. And I think one of the cool things now, you can see our prices are quite low for these sessions. And it looks like if we get the child tax credit passed, there might be a little bit of extra cash in your household to help pay for our sessions. So, that's a great thing too, because we don't qualify for insurance coverage quite yet. Maybe someday that'll happen also, but in the meantime, maybe they have a chance to pay for it with a child tax credit. $30 per half hour, and if we go ahead and book a minimum of 4 sessions at a time, then we'll knock that down to $99. So Leslie, I think that kind of wraps things up. We still have some folks with us, and
Okay.
I don't know how you were able to hold this all together, but maybe how about if we open the line again to Dr. Buggy if he's there? Yeah,
Okay.
it's great to get with him here. Whoop. Tom, are you there with us today still?
I think so. Am I?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Fantastic. We can
Very
hear
well
you.
done.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much. It was great to have you last time. You were a real highlight to our talk. And don't you think Leslie did a great job today of explaining about this?
She did, especially when you got offline.
Sidelined, huh? Yeah,
Too
yeah.
much heat in Nevada, I guess.
A little thunderstorm, actually.
Oh
I'm going to
boy.
open the line here to Rebecca Gomez, who's also with us.
Okay,
Let's
great.
see if we can do that. Come on. Rebecca, can you try to open your mic and join us? There you go.
Hello.
Nice to have you on board.
Hi,
Thank you.
Rebecca.
Thank you for the webinar and your time today.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Was Leslie able to handle the questions pretty well? Did you have anything else you'd like to ask?
No, she did great. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciated your response.
Oh,
I just have a very stubborn child, so
Do
all of
you?
the
well,
things that you suggested, we continue to do, and I think you touched upon it, is like keep going, don't give up, and just try to keep them involved with different things as they're able and willing.
right. Yeah, I really found, many of the kids, it's a delicate balance because with the sensory issues that you're describing, it can be really difficult to overcome. So the only thing you could do is keep offering it. But I'll tell you that, one of the most striking examples I had with a child that I work with that I was talking about that was super restricted on what he would eat was really, he started feeding his mom, like helping his mom with a little cooking. He was not going to touch it in terms of get for himself, but he would feed his mom or he would help her cook something for dinner, and then he really enjoyed anybody else eating it but him. But it did eventually get to the point where he started trying. He really liked the cooking activities, and he did start trying and expanding his repertoire. But as I said, and as you know, as a parent, it doesn't happen overnight. I wish it would. It would be
Yeah.
so much easier. But I commend you for for trying. And, as I said, if it's something they can't even tolerate smelling and like the kind of how it feels, whether it's in their mouth or on their hands, the other option is to put it in a baggie and let them kind of explore it that way. So that way it's not quite as overwhelming. Have you tried that?
No, that baggie idea was new. He did some, finger painting and swirling of that when he was younger in bags, but I didn't think to try that with food. So
Yeah,
we will be.
it's another way, depending on what it is, if it's messy, definitely in a baggie. If it's, because I've had kids do finger painting with, oh gosh, with pudding, yogurt, whipped cream, those kinds of things where, depending on, if you need to put it in a baggie, but if they can tolerate touching it. And then sometimes once in a while, it's amazing how many things kids I've worked with will eat besides a food item, like the Play-Doh or something. But, it's just typical kids, they're going to try it out and see what it tastes like. But it might help just kind of break that cycle of, sometimes they get into that cycle where they absolutely refuse to try anything different. So by not making it an eating issue and more of let's just explore the food, it might bring their anxiety down a little bit.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Rebecca and Tom. It's really been a pleasure to have you and everybody else on our webinar today. You can look forward to seeing this posted. And in the meantime, keep an eye out for part 3 coming up in about 3 weeks in mid-July of Autism and Anxiety. And we look forward to seeing you all then.